Unit 4, Lesson 4, New Plants. As the population of the world increases, countries need to produce more and more food. At the same time, however, deserts are expanding, and millions of people are building houses on land that used to be farmland. How can we solve a problem that seems to have no solution? One way to increase the planet's food supply is for people to start eating different plants. There are more than 350,000 kinds of plants in the world. Of these, approximately 20,000 are suitable for humans to eat. But today, over 50% of our food supply comes from just 3 kinds of plants: corn, wheat, and rice. In fact, it is common in developing countries for people to depend on only 1 or 2 plants for their food. A disease or bad weather can destroy these crops, leaving people with nothing to eat. All people, and especially children, need protein to grow and to stay healthy. Many kinds of food contain protein, but some foods are better sources of protein than others. For example, corn, wheat, and rice are only 8 to 14% protein. Meat and fish are 20 to 30% protein. Soybeans, which are an important food in China and Japan, are almost 40% protein. Other beans eaten widely in Latin America have about the same amount of protein as meat. However, there are other plants that are rich in protein. People in parts of Papua New Guinea and in Southeast Asia eat winged beans, which are over 30% protein. The marama bean, as rich in protein as the soybean, grows wild in the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. The potato, an important food in Europe and North America, will not grow in a hot climate. But the cocoyam, which is similar to the potato, is eaten in Latin America and West Africa. This versatile plant can grow in a hot climate, and it does not matter whether the climate is wet or dry. Scientists are now experimenting with crops of buffalo gourds in Mexico and Lebanon. This plant grows wild in Arizona's Sonora Desert, and it could grow in other dry areas as well. The seeds of this plant are up to 35% protein. A few years ago, a new kind of teosinte plant was discovered in the mountains of Mexico. It is a relative of corn, but it can grow in a wetter climate than corn can. Even more important, teosinte plants can produce crops every year. They do not have to be replanted from seeds, as corn does. Nevertheless, there may be a problem with new plants. Will people be willing to eat them? Food is an important part of our lives, and it is often difficult to change to a new and different kind of food. However, scientists are optimistic. They know that 500 years ago, Europeans thought they were eating the best food in the world. Then, in the 16th century, a wide assortment of new foods, such as potatoes, tomatoes, pineapple, and chocolate, started arriving by boat from Central and South America. At first, most Europeans wouldn't touch these bizarre foods. In fact, many people thought these foods were poisonous. Over time, however, people accepted these foods, and now it's hard to imagine Italian food without tomatoes, or a British meal without potatoes. In the 1920s, George Washington Carver started experimenting with the peanut, which is as rich in protein as meat. He developed many ways to use the peanut as food, and today it's eaten all over the world. Perhaps in a few years, teosinte and the marama bean will be as widely used as the peanut. And consider the soybean, which is now the most important plant in the United States. 80 years ago, the soybean wasn't even grown as an industrial crop. Some people feel strongly that genetically engineered food could solve the world's food crisis. Humans have been using selective breeding for millennia to improve food crops, but genetic engineering provides a way to greatly accelerate the process and to introduce traits from unrelated species. Today, many crops have been genetically modified to be resistant to some types of pests, while others have been engineered to make them taste better or last longer. Available also are plants that have been genetically altered to make them more nutritious. Biotechnology companies call them prescription foods because they're supposed to solve health problems. Examples of prescription foods are vitamin A-boosted golden rice and protein-enhanced potatoes. Other crops have been modified to make them drought or salt resistant, which makes it possible for them to grow in poor soil. The production of genetically modified, GM food is highly controversial. Environmentalists worry that these crops could eventually become uncontrollable weeds, or that they might breed with wild plants or other crops. Some scientists claim that genetic engineering will actually have a negative impact on crop yields and soil quality, and in the end will just deprive more farmers of land on which they could grow their own food. In addition to concerns about how GM crops might affect the environment, there is the question of whether these crops would actually have a positive effect on the global food shortage. Some people have suggested that biotech companies have started promoting GM foods as a solution to the world's food problem in order to change the negative impression that many people have of these foods. There are also many people who believe that prescription foods won't help the situation because they do not address the real cause of malnutrition, which is poverty. According to Desha Siripatra, who works for the Alternative Agriculture Network in Thailand, if the poor had land, they would have better diets. The poor don't need vitamin A, they need vitamin L. That's vitamin land. And they need vitamin M. That's vitamin money. Malnutrition is because of poverty, not a lack of technology.